Part I. The Inheritance. I didn't know what I expected when I first saw Blackwood Farm. Maybe something quaint, like the photos in those countryside real estate magazines, fields dotted with sheep, old stone walls glowing gold under the English sun. What I found instead was grey. The kind of grey that sticks to your clothes, seeps into your lungs, and tells you you're not supposed to be here. The bus from Leeds left me at a crossroads an hour before dusk. The driver didn't wait for me to gather my things. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like, "Good luck," and drove off without looking back. From there, I walked the last half mile, suitcase in one hand, the will packet from the solicitor in the other. The road wound through endless fields of yellowed grass and mossy fences. Not a single sound except the wind, and even that felt muffled, like the whole valley was holding its breath. The farmhouse emerged from the mist like something half remembered. To stories of dark stone, a crooked roof, and smoke-black chimneys that hadn't seen use in years. It sat alone on the edge of the moors, surrounded by skeletal trees and the low outline of a barn, or maybe a stable further down the slope. Gabriel Blackwood, my great-uncle, had lived here alone until he died last year. I'd met him only once when I was 10. He'd sent me a wooden puzzle box for my birthday afterward. I never managed to open it. When the lawyer, Evelyn Wells, called last month saying I'd inherited his property, I laughed. "You mean some antique furniture?" I'd asked. She said, "No, Mr. Harper. The entire estate." Inside, the farmhouse smelled of wood rot and something sweetly metallic, like old pennies soaked in vinegar. Dust coated everything, the mantel, the chairs, the cracked photographs lining the walls. My footsteps echoed. It felt wrong to make noise. I found the note in the kitchen. It wasn't in an envelope, just pinned to the wall above the stove with a nail. The paper had yellowed around the edges, the handwriting sharp and deliberate. The rules of Blackwood Farm. Do not go outside after sunset. Check the barn every morning, but never open it. Lead the black goat into the barn if it appears. Do not look it in the eyes. If you hear, "Pop goes the weasel," lock yourself in the bathroom and wait until dawn. Leave immediately if the television turns on by itself. Do not eat the pears from the orchard. GB. I read it twice, then a third time, half smiling. Gabriel always had a dark sense of humor, according to my mother. He'd been eccentric, as she'd put it, living out here alone since the 70s. Maybe this was his idea of a joke, one last prank from beyond the grave. Still, I took the list down and folded it into my pocket. Old habits. I collect strange things. Found notes, flyers, packaging, bits of humanity. But this one felt heavier, like a warning that didn't want to be ignored. Upstairs, the master bedroom looked almost untouched. The bed was made, sheets stiff with time. On the nightstand sat a Bible, a brass key, and a small silver locket. Inside the locket was a lock of hair, black and brittle. I closed it without thinking. The sun had already dipped behind the hills when I finished unpacking. The shadows in the hallway stretched long and strange. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing by the stairs, tall, hunched, watching. When I turned my head, the space was empty. I laughed it off. Jet lag. Or maybe the fog. Yorkshire fog plays tricks on your mind. I made some tea in the kitchen and ate a granola bar for dinner, sitting by the dusty window. Outside, the sky turned from grey to black. No stars. Just the silhouette of the barn against the horizon, its roof sagging like a sleeping animal. That's when I heard it. A thud. Then another. From the direction of the barn. Something heavy, dragging against wood. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. The sound came again. A scraping, then a low, wet snort, almost like an animal breathing too close to a microphone. My brain scrambled for logic. Maybe a fox, maybe the wind moving old boards. Then, faintly, I heard my name. Nathan. It wasn't loud. It wasn't whispered. It was spoken, calm and deliberate, like someone testing if I'd answer. Every muscle in my body locked. I set the cup down carefully and turned off the light. The darkness outside thickened, pressing against the windows. Rule 1. Do not go outside after sunset. For the first time, I felt the weight of the words. They weren't a joke. The voice didn't come again, but I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the armchair in the parlor, facing the front door, until the first grey light bled through the curtains. When I finally dared to step outside, the grass was soaked, though it hadn't rained. My boots squelched as I crossed to the barn. The wooden door was shut, padlocked with the same brass key I'd found upstairs. I told myself I'd just take a look. Just a look. The padlock was cold as ice. When I leaned close, I caught the faintest metallic smell again. Blood. Maybe. Dried and old. Something dark streaked down the wood, like paint. Except paint doesn't attract flies. I stepped back and swallowed hard. Rule 2. Check the barn every morning, but never open it. Not, don't go near it. Not, avoid it. Check it. But never open it. Gabriel had written these words carefully, almost lovingly. I could see his hand in every sharp edge of ink. That was the first time I felt the house watching me. Not metaphorically, watching. From the windows, from the eaves, from the cracks in the stones. As though something inside it had shifted its attention, like a sleeper stirring from a long dream. By afternoon, I tried to shake it off. I found the old generator behind the kitchen, filled it with the remaining petrol, and got a few lights working. The TV in the living room buzzed but didn't power on. Thank God. When night came again, I closed all the curtains and locked every door. I told myself I'd follow the rules, at least until I sold the place. Maybe a few weeks. Enough to clean up, sort the papers, contact the solicitor. Easy money. That's what I thought. But around midnight, as I sat sketching in my notebook by the fire, something moved on the other side of the glass. A shadow, low to the ground, moving with purpose. Then a shape. A silhouette of something quadrupedal. Its back too high, its limbs wrong. It stood just beyond the reflection of the flames. A goat, black as the space between breaths. Its eyes caught the firelight, and for a split second, I thought I saw them move. Not like animal eyes, but human, focused, aware. Rule 3. Lead the black goat into the barn if it appears. Do not look it in the eyes. My throat went dry. I grabbed my coat and flashlight, forcing myself out into the cold. The air was so dense with fog I could taste iron on my tongue. The goat stood perfectly still, its body steamless despite the chill. Okay, I whispered. Okay, fine. Step by step, I led it toward the barn. Its hooves made no sound. Every time I glanced down, I felt the pull to look at its face, to see what was behind those ember-bright eyes. But I didn't. I focused on the ground, the grass, the door. The key turned easily. The lock clicked open. The goat stepped inside on its own. The air from within the barn was wrong. Warm. Wet. It smelled like something alive and dying at the same time. I wanted to shut the door immediately, but before I could, the goat spoke. Not in English, not even in words I could understand, just a low human sound, like a man trying to remember how to breathe. I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the key twice before getting it right. When I got back to the house, the clock read 3:03 a.m. I sat by the window until dawn, staring at the barn, afraid that if I blinked, the door would open again. Section 2. The blood in the straw. The morning light here doesn't look like morning anywhere else. It doesn't rise. It seeps. Pale and cold, like milk diluted with ash. It filters through the mist and slides down the stones, too weak to cast shadows. I hadn't slept at all. My clothes smelled like smoke and sweat and something faintly metallic that I didn't want to identify. I made coffee on the old gas stove and stood by the window, staring at the barn. The lock I'd fastened a few hours ago still hung there, still glinting dull brass in the light. I told myself I dreamed the voice, the goat, the heat that came from inside. Dreams can mimic reality if you're exhausted enough. But when I stepped outside, the air had that feeling again, thick, heavy, holding its breath. The grass leading to the barn was flattened in a narrow trail. Hoofprints pressed deep into the mud. They weren't there last night. I forced myself closer. Every instinct in my body screamed to stay away. But curiosity, the kind that ruins people, pushed me on. The padlock was intact. The wood, though, looked different. Wet, darker. Something had dripped down the door overnight. At first I thought it was rainwater until I noticed the flies. They gathered in clusters around a faint ring-shaped stain on the ground, blood, dark and sticky, already half-dried. And the pattern wasn't random. The blood formed a circle, precise as if drawn by hand, wide enough to stand in. Inside the circle, the earth was untouched, clean, as though the soil itself had refused to absorb what was offered to it. I stepped back, pulse pounding. No, I muttered. No, this is some kind of prank. But who would prank me here? The nearest neighbor was a mile away. The rule sheet in my pocket felt like lead. Rule 2, check the barn every morning, but never open it. That single phrase started to twist inside my head. The command wasn't to stay away. It was to witness. To confirm that whatever lived behind those doors still existed. A ritual of acknowledgement. Something scratched from inside. 3 sharp, deliberate rakes across the wood. I dropped the mug I'd been holding. The ceramic shattered, and for a moment the noise felt obscene in the silence that followed. I didn't open the barn. I couldn't. But I touched the wood again, just to prove to myself it was real. It pulsed, faintly, like something breathing behind it. I stumbled back toward the house. The fog had thickened, erasing the horizon. The farmhouse stood alone, small and dark against the pale field. When I reached the porch, I realized something impossible. The door I'd locked from the inside last night stood slightly ajar. Inside, the air was colder than outside. The fire in the hearth had died sometime before dawn, leaving only the faint scent of charred wood and something else. I noticed it first on the floor, small, rusty spots, a few inches apart, leading from the front door toward the kitchen. Drops. Dried blood. I followed them, stupidly, like a man watching his own dream unfold. They led me to the kitchen table. On it sat the rule sheet, flattened neatly, as if someone had smoothed it out. The ink had bled slightly, but only on one line. The third rule. Lead the black goat into the barn if it appears. Do not look it in the eyes. My stomach turned cold. I didn't remember taking it out of my pocket. Then I noticed the smell, earthy, animal, sweet and rancid all at once. I turned and saw a tuft of coarse black hair caught on the edge of the counter. That's when I realized I wasn't alone last night. Something else had come into the house. Around noon, I decided to drive into the village. Anything to get away from that house for a few hours. But when I turned the ignition, the engine made a dry clicking sound and died. The dashboard lights flickered once and went out. Battery's dead, I thought. Fine. I'd charge it later. But when I popped the hood, the cables weren't just loose, they'd been cut. Clean through. Someone, or something, didn't want me leaving. The rest of the day crawled by. I tried to keep busy, cleaning out drawers, dusting shelves, pretending this was just a normal old house. I even found a bottle of whiskey in the pantry. Gabriel's brand, Glenfiddich, 18-year. I took a long drink and it burned like fire, grounding me for the first time in days. By evening, I'd almost convinced myself that I could survive this place. Just a few more nights. A few more rules. Then, as the sun began to sink, I saw it again. Movement by the orchard. A figure, low and dark, slipping between the pear trees. The fog caught its shape in fragments, shoulder, back, horn, then gone. The air buzzed faintly, like static. My skin prickled. I locked every door, checked every window twice. That night, I slept in the living room with the fire going and the lights on. It must have been around 2 in the morning when I woke to the sound of humming. A faint tune, drifting through the vents. It took me a moment to recognize it. Pop Goes the Weasel. The melody warped in the walls, notes bending, dragging. It wasn't coming from outside. It was inside, somewhere between the rooms, crawling through the air like a thing alive. Rule 4 flashed through my head like a flare. If you hear Pop Goes the Weasel, lock yourself in the bathroom and wait until dawn. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. I ran up the stairs, every step groaning underfoot. The song grew louder, distorted, replaying the same line again and again. All around the mulberry bush. I reached the bathroom, slammed the door, and turned the lock. The room was small, windowless, with pale tiles that glowed faintly under the flashlight beam. My reflection in the mirror looked wrong. Eyes too wide, face too pale. The music stopped. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, on the stairs. I pressed myself into the bathtub, clutching the flashlight to my chest. The floorboards creaked outside the door. Someone, or something, was standing there, breathing. The handle turned once. Softly. Testing. Then a whisper, low and close to the crack in the door. Nathan. It wasn't Gabriel's voice. It wasn't any voice I recognized. It sounded stretched, as though something wearing human language like a mask was trying to pronounce my name. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped so sharply that my breath fogged the air. The whisper came again, amused this time, almost tender. Good boy. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Then, silence. Long, heavy, final. I stayed there until the window outside turned grey with dawn. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. The house smelled faintly of burnt pears. Section 3. The Static and the Journal. I woke to the sound of rain that wasn't rain. It was too even, too hollow. Like 1,000 fingertips drumming the roof in perfect rhythm. When I looked outside, the sky was clear. The sound stopped the moment my eyes touched the window. I don't think the mountain of coffee I've been drinking is helping. My hands tremble when I pour it, and every reflection in this house feels half a second late. The morning after the song, I found claw marks on the bathroom door. 3 long, shallow grooves, clean and deliberate, right where my head had rested against the wood. I almost laughed. Almost. The laughter turned to ash when I went downstairs. The television in the parlor, the one I'd never managed to plug in, was on. No signal, just static. Grey and white snow flickering in the dim light. The plug dangled loose beside the wall outlet. I don't remember walking closer, but I must have, because suddenly the screen filled my vision. The static thickened, twisting, trying to form a shape. The hiss in the speakers grew rhythmic, like breathing through teeth. Then an image flickered through. A face, too close, too pale, features stretched like something pressing from the other side of glass. The eyes were wrong. Empty but aware. My name bled through the static, barely audible. Nathan. Rule 5. Leave immediately if the television turns on by itself. I backed away so fast I hit the coffee table. The impact broke the trance. The screen blinked black. The air felt lighter, but only barely. I left everything behind. Wallet, bag, even my sketchbook, and ran for the car. The morning fog clung to the ground like smoke. When I tried the ignition, nothing happened. The cables were still cut. Fine. I'd walk. The road leading out of the valley is long and cruelly straight. You can see miles ahead, but it never seems to get closer. I made it halfway before realizing I couldn't hear anything. Not wind, not birds, not even my footsteps. The world had gone perfectly still. Then, from behind me, the faint jingle of a music box. That same cursed melody, Pop Goes the Weasel. I ran until my chest ached. When I looked back, the farmhouse was gone, swallowed by mist. I thought I'd escaped until the road ended where it shouldn't have. The front gate of Blackwood Farm. Inside again. Same dust. Same silence. The only proof that time had passed was the faint flicker of the TV light in the parlor. Off now, but warm, as if it had been watching me leave. I drank from Gabriel's whiskey and decided if I was stuck here, I'd at least understand why. I started searching. Drawers, cupboards, closets, everywhere. Dust and moths mostly. Then, behind the wardrobe in Gabriel's room, I found a hatch. Small, square, hidden beneath a layer of plaster. It opened into a crawl space smelling of mold and iron. Inside, a wooden chest, bound with rope. The lid bore a single symbol, an overlapping circle and line, painted in dried brown that I prayed was ink. Inside the chest were books. Journals, stacked and numbered. The earliest dated 1845. The handwriting changed with each generation, but the first page of every one began the same way. To those who inherit Blackwood, the covenant binds you still. I spent hours reading by lantern light. The entries blurred into one another. Storms, disappearances, livestock slaughtered in ritual patterns, whispers beneath the floors. But some details repeated too often to ignore. The goat is the keeper. The barn is the gate. The blood must be witnessed but not spilled. Then one entry from 1862 stopped me cold. Edward broke the sixth rule. 8 of the pair. His body turned to smoke and glass before our eyes. The house kept the rest. Another, written in Gabriel's unmistakable hand, decades later. To disobey is to invite it inside. To leave without release is to carry it with you. Beneath that line, a smudge of black, fingerprint-sized. When I closed the book, the air in the room shifted. A faint scrape echoed from below. Floorboards flexing under a weight that wasn't mine. I held my breath. From the direction of the barn came a single knock. Then another. Then silence. I should have stayed inside. But something in the journals, some buried instinct, pulled me to witness again. The barn door was still locked, but the soil before it shimmered wet under my flashlight. The circle of blood had changed. Now it spiraled inward, ending in a crude symbol identical to the one on the chest. The wind carried a low voice through the cracks. You read it. It sounded like Gabriel. Older, tired, echoing from inside the walls of the barn. I whispered his name before I could stop myself. The reply came as a sound between a sigh and a laugh. Then you know what you are. The padlock rattled once. The goat, or what looked like the goat, stepped into view through the slats. Its eyes glowed faintly to smoldering embers in the dark. But its mouth moved wrong, shaping words instead of bleating. Good boy, it said again. I dropped the flashlight. The beam spun across the grass, catching the edges of the barn, the outline of the creature inside. It wasn't a goat anymore. It was unfolding, stretching, reorganizing bones. I ran. By the time I reached the house, every door slammed on its own. Windows shattered inward, glass spraying like frozen rain. The lights flared and died. The air vibrated with the deep hum of something ancient remembering its shape. I stumbled into the bathroom and locked myself in, my pulse pounding against the tile. Through the walls came a single, low whisper, same as before but now multiplied, layered, echoing from every direction. Nathan Harper. The covenant is broken. Then the mirror cracked from corner to corner. I don't know how long I sat there. When the sound stopped, dawn was trying to claw its way through the fog. The mirror reflected nothing now. No me, no room, just empty grey. I think the rules kept me alive this far. But they're changing. I can feel it. The house doesn't just want obedience anymore. It wants me. Part 2, Section 1. The house that locks itself. I'm starting to think this journal isn't for anyone else anymore. It's just a way to prove I still exist. That the world outside this valley hasn't dissolved into mist and memory. Because I tried again today. To leave. When I woke, my reflection had returned to the mirror. Same tired eyes, same bruises under them. But when I turned away, it stayed for a fraction too long, still watching. I packed what I could. laptop, sketches, Gabriel's journals, the rule sheet, and stepped outside. The fog was thicker than ever, a rolling ocean of white swallowing the trees. The air hummed faintly, like power lines over wet ground. The road should have led east to the crossroads, the same place the bus dropped me off. But now it just looped. I walked for hours. The horizon never changed. Every time I looked back, the farmhouse sat exactly where it had been, neither closer nor farther. By the time the light dimmed, I realized I'd been walking in circles. The sun was a dull orange smear above the moor when I heard the first sound behind me. Hooves. Slow, steady, measured. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The air grew warmer with every step I took. Then a voice, Gabriel's voice again, carried on the wind. You can't leave until it chooses. I ran until I couldn't breathe, stumbled through mud and brambles, then collapsed. When I looked up, the farmhouse was in front of me again, less than 50 feet away. The front door was open. The kitchen lights flickered, running on their own rhythm now. The air smelled like burnt sugar and damp stone. On the table lay a single pear, perfectly ripe. Yellow skin glistening as though it had just been washed. Rule 6. Do not eat the pears from the orchard. I didn't touch it. Not at first. But something about the way it sat there, centered on the table like an offering, made me feel watched. I wrapped it in a towel and took it outside to bury. The soil was wet and soft. The pear made a dull sound when it hit the bottom of the hole. As I covered it, the air shifted, every sound in the valley vanished. No wind, no insects. Just a low vibration under my feet. Then, faintly, from somewhere beneath the earth, came a muffled thud, as if something deep below had answered. When I looked up, the orchard was gone. Only open field. The farmhouse windows all burned with faint orange light. Inside, I noticed the furniture had moved again. The chairs formed a circle in the parlor, each one perfectly spaced, facing inward. At the center, on the rug, lay the rule sheet. The ink had spread across the page, bleeding into new words beneath the old list. Rule 7. When it comes to speak, listen once. Then run. My throat went dry. I don't remember writing it. The clock above the fireplace struck 3. Every tick echoed too loud, too deep, like a heartbeat behind the walls. Then came the static. The TV turned itself on again, though I'd unplugged it days ago. But this time, it wasn't noise. The image was clear, grainy black and white footage of the barn door from outside. I watched in disbelief as the lock clicked open. Slowly, deliberately, the door swung wide. Something stepped out. At first, it looked human, tall, broad-shouldered, but the proportions were wrong. The limbs too long, the gait too smooth. It turned toward the camera, and the screen went black. Then my own reflection appeared on the TV, sitting exactly where I was sitting, in real time. Behind me, a figure loomed in the flickering light. I spun around. Nothing. When I turned back, the screen showed the kitchen instead. The pear I'd buried now sat again on the table, unblemished. That's when the whisper started. Not from the TV. From the walls. A dozen voices speaking over one another, rising and falling like waves. I pressed my hands to my ears. But they weren't in my head. They were everywhere, vibrating the glass, the floors, my bones. One voice finally cut through the others. Calm. Female. Nathan Harper, you are the last. I shouted. The last what? The answer came not in words but in weight. The crushing realization that I wasn't supposed to be here. That Gabriel hadn't left this place to me as a gift, but as a replacement. The front door slammed shut. Every lock turned on its own. Windows snapped closed one by one. The house sealed itself. I ran upstairs, heart hammering. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the house were breathing. In the hallway, the portraits of the Blackwood family had changed, the eyes scratched out, replaced with small holes that leaked something black. By the time I reached the bedroom, the rule sheet in my pocket was warm to the touch. When I pulled it out, It was blank. Completely blank. It's midnight now. I can hear hooves on the roof, slow and steady, circling. Every so often, something heavy drags across the floor above me. The smell of iron is everywhere. I've locked myself in the bathroom again. I can't tell if it's night or day outside. The window shows nothing but grey. I keep thinking about that last line from Gabriel's journal. To leave without release is to carry it with you. I don't know what release means. But if it wants to speak, and if I'm supposed to listen once, then I'll be ready. I hope I'll be ready. Section 2. The voice beneath the roof. The house started speaking last night. Not in language, at least not the kind you can write down. It was the rhythm first. The groan of the rafters forming words I almost understood. The wind in the chimney repeating the same 3-beat pattern. Tap, tap, drag. I told myself it was the storm, though the air outside was still. Sometime after 2 a.m., I heard my name again. Soft. Almost kind. Nathan. It came from the ceiling above the bed, directly above my head. I didn't answer. The voice continued, a little louder, low enough to make the plaster tremble. You opened the way. I sat up, flashlight in one hand, rule sheet, still blank, in the other. Gabriel, I said before I could stop myself. And then, clear, familiar. Good boy. The same words the goat had used. Except this time they carried warmth, memory, almost love. The ceiling split along the beam with a dry crack. Dust fell in sheets. From the gap, something black and wet pushed through. Rope, at first glance, until it pulsed. Veins. I backed toward the wall. The flashlight flickered. The thing withdrew, but not before I saw a hint of shape. A jaw that wasn't bone, eyes like coals buried in ash. When morning came, the damage was gone. No crack, no dust. Only a damp stain where the voice had been. I tried to write everything down, but the words kept shifting on the page. The letters bled together until all that remained were circles. Spirals like the symbols on the barn. The journals I found yesterday, Gabriel's and the older ones, now read differently too. Entire paragraphs had rewritten themselves. The keeper speaks through blood. To look is to know. To know is to join. I tore the page out and burned it in the fireplace. The smoke smelled sweet, like fruit left too long in the sun. When the fire died, a shape remained in the ashes, 4 hoof prints. Around noon I heard hooves again, not outside this time, but in the hallway. They stopped outside the bathroom door. Then the handle turned once, twice, patient. I didn't move. A breath fogged the crack beneath the door, followed by that same whisper. You buried what was offered. The pear. My stomach turned cold. I whispered, you told me not to eat it. We told you not to waste it. The voice came from everywhere then. Floor, ceiling, pipes. It laid over itself until the words became vibration, pressing against my skull. I clutched my ears and screamed. But even my own voice echoed back wrong, deeper, older. Then silence. When I opened the door, the hallway was filled with water up to my ankles. Black, thick, reflecting nothing. I waded through it toward the stairs. Each step made the floor groan like bone under weight. The walls wept the same dark fluid, and every portrait of the Blackwood smiled now. Mouth stretched, teeth too many. At the bottom of the stairs, the living room lights flickered to life. The TV glowed again, but this time it didn't show static. It showed the barn, the door wide open. Inside, the goat stood perfectly still, staring at the camera. Then it spoke in Gabriel's voice, clear as breath. The covenant breaks tonight. Come see. I don't know why I obeyed. Maybe it was the way he said my name, the way it sounded like my own thoughts. I stepped outside. The fog parted for me like a curtain. The barn door swung gently in the wind, creaking in rhythm with my heartbeat. I could see shapes inside, chains, hooks, something that glimmered wet. The goat waited at the center, massive now, taller than me, skin stretched tight over muscle that wasn't right. Nathan, it said again. But the mouth didn't move. The voice came from behind me. Gabriel stood there. Or what was left of him. His eyes black hollows. His face half absorbed into shadow. The rest of him shimmering like heat. "You've done well," he said. "You've kept the rules." I tried to speak, but he continued. "Now it's time for the last one." He pointed to the floor between us. A seventh line had appeared, carved into the dirt in symbols that twisted if I looked too long. Rule 7. When the house calls your name, answer once. I whispered. And then? Then it knows where to find you. The goat turned its head toward me. The sound of bones grinding filled the air. The smell of iron returned, stronger than ever. Something inside me, the instinct that tells animals when to flee, snapped. I ran. I didn't stop running until the farmhouse door slammed shut behind me on its own. It's dark again now. Every light flickers like candle flame in wind I can't feel. The rules have started to appear on the walls themselves, scrawled in black, shifting letters. I think the house is teaching me how to write them. I keep hearing Gabriel's voice through the vents. He says I'm almost ready. That the covenant needs a name. That once I speak it, the house will rest. But I can't remember my own name anymore when he says it. It doesn't sound right. If I write it here, maybe I'll remember. Nathan. Section 3. The Covenant's Mouth. I don't know how long I've been awake. Hours. Days. The clocks don't work anymore. They only tick when the house breathes. The walls have grown veins. Black threads run through the plaster, pulsing in time with that heartbeat under the floor. If I touch them, they twitch. Every room smells like blood and rain. The rule sheet is gone. It's carved into my memory now, or maybe into me. I can still hear each one like a prayer or a curse. And there's one more, though I haven't written it down yet. Gabriel whispered it in my sleep. Rule 8. When the barn opens its mouth, feed it fire. I think I know what that means. It began again just before dusk. The hum. The lights flickering in rhythm. The air pressure dropping so fast my ears popped. I looked out the window, and the fog wasn't fog anymore. It was moving. A mass of smoke, alive, pressing against the edges of the field. The barn door was open. Wide this time. Inside, a glow. Not firelight. Not electricity. Something deeper, pulsing red, as if the earth itself had cracked. I could hear Gabriel calling. Not from the barn, from inside my head. His voice clearer than my own thoughts. Come. Witness what you inherited. The front door opened on its own. The cold that rushed in wasn't like air. It was like standing before an open grave. I took the flare gun from the drawer by the fireplace, the one Gabriel left with the old survival kit. I don't know why I hadn't used it before. Maybe because I thought fire might anger whatever this is. Now I think that's the point. The ground trembled when I stepped outside. The fields pulsed, small waves of earth rising and settling again, like something vast shifting beneath the soil. As I walked toward the barn, shapes moved at the edge of the mist, silhouettes of people, dozens of them, standing between the trees. I could see their faces in flashes when lightning crawled behind the clouds. Blackwoods. All of them. Every generation I'd seen in the portraits. Watching. Waiting. They didn't move, but their mouths opened as I passed. Silent. Mouths open wider, wider, until their faces split into dark crescents. The barn door creaked wider. The goat was waiting inside. No, what was left of it? Its legs bent wrong, fused into the floor. The skin stretched across the frame like parchment. From its chest, a human arm hung, the fingers twitching like they were learning to move again. Nathan, it said in Gabriel's voice. You've brought it this far. Finish it. Behind it, the air shimmered, forming a spiral of black and red, a vortex breathing in slow rhythm. It wasn't a doorway, it was a throat. A mouth the size of the room, lined with light that looked like teeth. The smell of pears filled the air. Sweet. Rotten. Gabriel's face flickered in the glow. Half human, half shadow. It needs you. It always needed one of us. Blood remembers. You are the last Blackwood. I screamed that I wasn't, that I wanted no part of it. The words echoed back wrong. The voice on the return wasn't mine. There is no leaving, Nathan. Only choosing. The barn began to breathe. Boards expanding, contracting. Nails shrieking as they bent. I aimed the flare gun. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep it steady. I'm not your keeper, I said. And I'm not your blood. Then burn, it whispered. The flare went off like thunder. The red light filled the barn, catching every surface in a furious glow. The walls screamed, not creaked, screamed, and the air turned liquid heat. The goat convulsed, splitting open from throat to belly, spilling black smoke that caught fire on contact. The spiral behind it shrank, sucking the flame inward. The portraits outside caught fire without touch. I heard the house moan in the distance, a single deep sound like a dying animal. Gabriel's voice rose above it all, pleading now. Don't break it. You don't understand. But I did. I understood that this covenant was never about protection. It was a feeding chain. The house, the barn, the land, all bound by blood. The rules weren't to survive. They were to sustain. I fired again. The roof collapsed. Heat hit me like a wave. I don't remember running. Only the light swallowing everything, fire reflecting in the fog, turning it into molten glass. When I came to, I was lying on the field. The barn was gone. Just a black pit where it had stood, still smoking. The fog had lifted. The house sat dark, dead, silent. For the first time since I arrived, I could hear the wind. I think the covenant broke with the fire. But I'm not sure. I keep hearing hooves in my sleep, soft and distant, pacing the hallway outside whatever room I'm in. There's still ash under my nails. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see Gabriel's face behind them, burned into the darkness. He said one more thing before he disappeared. I didn't write it down until now because I wasn't sure it was real. But I remember every word. If the house ever sleeps, someone will have to wake it again. Dash 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 dash. Part 3, Section 1. What follows you home? I'm writing this from a small flat in Boston. 3rd floor, 2 windows. The kind of place you rent when you want to forget where you've been. I don't dream of the house anymore. I dream as the house. Heavy, full of wind and whispers, watching a stranger walk its halls. Sometimes I wake to the sound of the radiator hissing and think it's the barn door creaking open. It's been 17 days since I ran. I left my car in the valley. Walked until the fog gave way to road. A farmer found me on the verge at dawn, barefoot, covered in ash. I told him there would been a fire. He didn't ask questions. In the hospital, they said I'd inhaled smoke and spent 2 nights under observation. When I asked about Blackwood Farm, they said there was no record of it burning. No record of a property by that name anywhere in Yorkshire. In fact, Evelyn Wells, the solicitor, doesn't return my calls. Her number rings and ends in a single tone, the kind you get when a line no longer exists. I know what I saw. I know what I did. But every search turns up nothing. No Gabriel Blackwood. No census records. Not even a map that shows the road I took. It's as if the land swallowed itself when the fire went out. The journal was the only thing I brought back. I didn't mean to. I found it in my bag while unpacking last week. Pages soot-stained, still warm when I touched it. The last entry isn't mine, but it's written in my handwriting. The rules follow blood, not place. That line has been looping in my head like a melody. I've started hearing small noises again, clicks from the walls, the faint scrape of hooves above me. My downstairs neighbor says the building has rats. I smile and nod, but I know the rhythm. Tap, tap, drag. Last night, I turned on the television to drown it out. The screen stayed black for a moment too long, then flickered. Not to static, to an image. The barn. Whole again. A figure stood at the door, half in shadow. It looked like me. The sound that followed wasn't human. It was that same deep breath, the sound of the house inhaling. When the picture cut, I noticed something on my table. A pear. Perfect, golden, glistening with dew. I didn't touch it. I went for the trash bin, but when I came back, it was gone. In its place, the journal lay open to a new page. Rule 1. Do not go outside after sunset. Rule 2. Check the walls each morning. The cracks are doors. Rule 3. Feed what follows. Rule 4. Don't answer your name if it comes from the dark. My handwriting again. Every line fresh, ink still wet. I think I understand now. The fire didn't end the covenant. It moved it. Maybe it was never about the farm. Maybe it's about whoever listens. Whoever believes. The rules aren't instructions anymore. They're contagion. It's 11:43 p.m. Something's knocking behind the wall by my bed. Soft. Patient. 3 beats. Tap. Tap. Drag. I'm not going to look. Not tonight. If you find this, if anyone finds this, don't read the rules aloud. Don't write them down. Because once they're written, they start to listen back. Section 2. The walls remember. The noises haven't stopped. They've only learned to hide between other sounds. The hum of the fridge, the passing traffic, the heartbeat in my ears when the room goes still. I started taping the walls, just to prove something was there. Old habit from design school. Isolate the source, map the pattern. When I play the recordings back, the rhythm always resolves into 4 beats. Tap, tap, drag, pause. Exactly the tempo the barn used to breathe. The super said there's no attic above me, only insulation. He offered to look anyway. When he opened the panel, dust fell in a single sheet like grey snow. Then he frowned and said, "That's strange. Somebody's already been up here." He pulled out a small brass key covered in soot. I didn't take it. He left it on my counter. It's the same size, the same weight as the one that locked the barn. 2 nights ago, I caught the smell again, pear skin and smoke. It came from the bathroom drain. The water trembles on its own now, little ripples that pulse to the rhythm on the tapes. At 3 a.m. the mirror fogged over by itself, though the room was cold. Words formed in the condensation, written backward but unmistakable. Feed what follows. I wiped them away, but when I looked down, the sink was full of black water. Inside it floated a single piece of paper torn from the journal. The same rule list. But there's a new line, scrawled in red. Rule 5. If you hear it behind the walls, do not run. It hates to be chased. The moment I read it, the pipes groaned and the lights flickered. The air smelled of wet stone. I sat on the floor until morning. I've stopped leaving the apartment. I can't stand the way the hallway echoes. It sounds too wide, as if it keeps going long after the physical corridor ends. Yesterday, when the mail slot rattled, I found an envelope with no address. Inside, a photo printed on thick matte paper. A still frame from security footage. Me, standing outside the barn, holding the flare gun. Behind me, the door already open. The timestamp reads 5th April, 2024. That's 3 days ago. This morning, the plaster above my bed cracked. A slow, deliberate split, the same pattern as the ceiling beam in Yorkshire. Dust fell onto the sheets in thin streams, like sand through glass. From inside the crack came breathing. Slow, measured. I whispered, "Gabriel." The breathing paused. Then a voice, smaller than I remembered, spoke my name. "Nathan." Let it in. The brass key rolled off the counter and landed at my feet. I don't know what's real anymore. The reflection in the window moves when I'm still. My phone camera shows things my eyes can't, shadows bending in the corners, a faint outline of the barn door behind me. The journal has started writing without me. When I leave it closed, I hear scratching. When I open it, new pages wait. The last entry isn't mine. Walls remember the shape of mouths. Houses remember the taste of names. I haven't slept. I keep seeing the pair again, sitting on the kitchen table like it was never gone. Each morning it's fresher, greener, as if the day resets around it. I think the house is rebuilding itself, piece by piece, through memory. Through me. When I touch the walls now, they're warm. They pulse in time with my heartbeat. Or maybe it's the other way around. Section 3. The last rule. The walls are breathing louder now. Every inhale rattles the windows. Every exhale makes the lights sway. The building groans like it remembers being something else. The pear is back again. I threw it away yesterday. I threw it away 5 times. It keeps returning to the table, always in the same place, a small bruise on the skin that looks like an eye. The key moves when I sleep. Each morning it lies closer to the bedroom door. Last night I dreamed of the barn again, except it wasn't in Yorkshire anymore. It was under the building, concrete wrapped around it like bone around a wound. I walked through the corridors until the wallpaper turned to wood grain, and the city noise outside turned to silence. Gabriel waited inside, standing where the goat used to be. He looked almost human this time, eyes clear, voice calm. "You brought it home," he said. "That's what it wanted." I asked him what it was. He smiled. "The thing that remembers. The thing that needs a name." He stepped closer and pressed the brass key into my hand. "You know the last rule now." When I woke, the key was already in my palm. My hand was bleeding where I'd gripped it too tight. The journal won't close anymore. Every time I try, it hums. Pages flutter like breathing. The newest entry isn't written. It's engraved. Rule 9. When the voice behind the wall says your name, answer once. Then let it in. I keep reading that line. My name looks different now. It doesn't feel like mine. Nathan Harper. Nathan. Nathan. The syllables stay strong, like something rotten you can't spit out. At 2:13 a.m., the breathing stopped. Total silence. Then, one knock from inside the wall. Soft. Patient. I said, "No." The second knock came, louder. The third one split the plaster. The key turned in the lock on its own. The door opened slowly, like something was being careful not to startle me. Black smoke poured in, thick, warm, smelling of soil and pears. In the middle of it stood Gabriel, or something wearing him. "You've done well," he said. "You've fed it long enough. Now it will feed you." He lifted his hand. The smoke followed, spiraling into my chest like breath reversed. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The air pressed through my mouth, filling me until it burned. And then, quiet. It's still quiet now. I can hear the walls settling, new veins forming beneath the paint. The floor beneath me hums, deep and steady, like the earth remembering its own pulse. When I breathe, the apartment breathes with me. When I blink, the lights flicker. When I write, the ink smells like ash. There's a final page in the journal now. I didn't write it. The rules of Harper House. Do not go outside after sunset. Feed what follows. Bury the gift but not the giver. Never speak your name aloud. When it knocks, answer once. Keep the fire ready. If you burn it, build again. Underneath, in faint handwriting that looks like mine but older. Every house needs a keeper. It's morning. I open the window to let the light in, but all I can see is fog. It smells like wet grass and ash. Somewhere below, hooves move slowly across the floorboards. Tap, tap, drag. The walls are warm again. They sound happy. I think I'll stay. Someone has to keep the rules.